You are about to meet Mercedes. She is a young, full-blown firecracker for the Lord Jesus. Katie met her in Washington, D.C. We were there. This was about a year ago for one of Sean Foyt's events. And whenever Katie met her, she was singing, praising the Lord in a subway as a sort of outreach to people, as a form of evangelism. It was really, really powerful, the story that Katie shared. She's going to share a little bit about that in this interview. But it is so awesome. There are so few people like Mercedes that you meet who, at her age, being so young, has absolutely just given everything for the Lord Jesus. While other people, they're thinking about all kinds of other stuff, the world and all the distractions that there are. Mercedes, she has made a decision to be a Levite for the Lord and give up everything and live by faith. She's got an awesome testimony, really powerful. And I'm not going to keep talking. I'm going to get right to it and let you hear it for yourself. Get ready to get set on fire. I had to hit the record button.
That's okay. But I was just telling Alan, I think the last time that I saw you was when we were in DC, and I was telling him my first impression when I met you was you were singing worship in a subway with Sultan.
Yeah.
I need to know this person.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun. Yeah, I think that was the last time I saw you.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think that was when I met you too.
Yeah. It was
so crazy.
Yeah. But so welcome to the podcast. This is Alan.
Nice to meet you.
Hey Alan, I'm Mercedes.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about you. I'm excited to hear your story.
Wow, I'm excited. Guys, thanks for inviting me to be on the podcast. I'm really stoked.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we start out every podcast asking our new guests to tell us their story. So if you wouldn't mind sharing like your testimony or story, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so I am currently 25 years old. So I grew up in a house where like a Catholic home, typical like Hispanic Catholic religious house. So I grew up with 3 younger siblings, was the mom for a bit, and I just never knew who God was. And after a while, my parents got divorced when I was about a sophomore in high school. So I feel like that's kind of where my story kind of pivots. I started going to a Christian youth group when I was in 7th grade with my best friend, and still just kind of like showed up for the emotional high, loved getting to cry every so often and stuff, and just kind of experienced the Lord at camps. But then sophomore year of high school, my parents got divorced. I actually like just kind of spiraled out of control. Like I was more into boys, I was getting drunk, I was just getting involved with weed, even like chewing tobacco, disgusting, like just all this weird stuff that wasn't like me. And then in that moment of like, or in that whole year of just like spiraling out of control, I started to actually see like, oh, there's Jesus, there's this God. And like actually was like, okay, like I think I'm in. So we went to summer camp that year, and I would like consider myself like, I was like, okay, God, I'm in. And I was saved. I was kind of one foot in, one foot out for a few years. I was like that zealous like teenager that was like telling everybody like to do one thing, but I was doing the other and everything. So I like to describe it as I was a Christian that I wouldn't like to be taught by, kind of thing. You know what I mean? We all know those people. So I was like, but I guess we all got to start somewhere. So then I got into college and was still a little bit partying, but also was kind of like, yeah, but there's God, but also just like, like I don't really care. Like I used grace as like that. I abused grace into, if I'm going to be forgiven, I can do whatever I want still. And just was so caught up in brokenness. But then in 2017, I took a year where I moved home and just went through the worst time of my life. 2016, I moved home, went through the worst year of my life. My depression was at an all-time high. I had like a failed suicide attempt, in a way of like, I had my mind set on it, but the Lord actually stopped me in my bed. Like I actually heard like, I have more for you, in a moment where I was like writing out a letter and I was done. And then after that, I was like, okay, there's something bigger than I know. And I still was just struggling a lot with sin. I was still struggling a lot with like, is there really this God, or what just happened? And then I got invited in 2017 to go to Washington, D.C. for an Awaken the Dawn tent event. So I'm hearing Todd White. I'm like, I don't know any of this like speaking in tongues stuff, like kind of know about the prophetic and like just worship, going off the page. Like, I'm like, it's all like new to me. Doing 2-hour worship sets was so new to me. And then Todd White is speaking about the orphan spirit. And he's talking about like, you're not a mistake. And I actually like remember recording this moment because I was like super moved by the fact that God is emotional, and started actually getting like, God wants to be personal. God wants to know me. And like, he actually wants to heal me. And like, I'm seeing this guy who went through a lot of things that I went through, except for like worse. And he is so like changed and convicted and like loved by God, and he loves God, like just all these things. And I just remember as he was talking, I was wrecked. And then at the end, he wanted to pray for everybody on the National Mall, to where like all of us were like on our faces. And I just remember like just feeling the warmth of the Holy Spirit, and like being healed of something in my body myself, and was just like, God, I'm in. Like, I don't know what it is, but I'm in. And after that, I would say that like that was like my saved to surrendered moment of like, okay, God, I don't know what the cost is. I don't know what I'm doing still. Like, I've just kind of been walking in this false identity of like just trying to still figure it out myself, but now who are you? So ever since then, it was kind of like this instant switch of like, oh, I'm gonna do ministry, like school is different, and I'm changing my major a bazillion times. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I want to do missions. Like, I don't know what that looks like, but the Lord speaks to me a lot about being a messenger and like songwriting, and really actually like using my gift for the glory of God rather than for the glory of myself. And just like actually being deeply convicted of like, there has to be more than a 30-minute service. There has to be more than, oh, we're just writing songs about us. There has to be more than this and what I've experienced. And there has to be more than religion and everything. And I just got so hungry and so like genuinely zealous to the fact of like, okay, I'm going to heal. I'm going to allow the Lord to heal me. I'm not going to do it on my own. I'm going to learn to be vulnerable. Like, I got my prayer language in my bedroom, which was really crazy. Like, I thought that was totally weird. And then just experienced a lot of the Lord, like healing people around me in relationship, whether it be physical or emotional, and even in myself, to where I was like, wow, like I'm moved by the heart of God. I'm no longer just wanting to like read the Bible out of knowledge, or just to be smarter, or just to prove myself to my parents who don't seem to care about me. You know what I mean? Like, I actually started to feel like I want to know the Father. So then I spent a couple of years in Chico, worked through all of my stuff, grew a lot, and like learned really like what is ministry versus like actual work, and like what is it to actually lay my life down versus just get a paycheck. And then the Lord brought me to Jesus Culture Sacramento for a year, and I did their leadership school. Just really wanted to grow. I really want to be a mom to future generations. Like, ever since I got saved, I'm like, I want to be the mom, but like saved, like actually sanctified, and like actually being able to raise up children in the way they should go, as a spiritual mom, physical mom, whatever. So I was just like looking at that, like, okay, God, this is my vision. This is my goal. How do I get there? So I went through that year, and now that I'm graduated from that school, I'm actually a missionary out of the house of prayer. I quit my job. Actually, Katie, when I met you, that was like a week fresh of like not having a job. I did not know what I was doing with my life, like 2 weeks or whatever. It was wild. So took that year. That was crazy. And honestly, I'm like, I like the Lord just pulled me in so quick that I feel like sometimes I have whiplash. I'm like, I don't even know how to process like 2020 and 2021, or I don't even know how I even got here half the time. So after that year of just being kind of in limbo, kind of being a nomad, the Lord told me to free up my schedule to travel. I was traveling twice a month, every month for a year, which is unreal. And that's how I was like making a living. The Lord would just take me to different places. And then he brought me to the prayer room more than just for services. Like, I actually started sitting in the prayer room to sit in the prayer room. I actually started to get plugged into the community, to where I'm sitting there one day and the Lord tells me to serve Jim Stillwell's vision. And he's the founder of our house of prayer. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm going to keep showing up. To now, I'm an intercessory missionary out of the house of prayer, which means that I get to help build night and day prayer. And when you're an intercessory missionary, whether you're from a mic or just sitting in the room, you're a prophetic messenger. And we are raising up prophetic messengers musically, verbally, like even people sitting in the room, just to prepare the coming of the Lord, because he's coming back for a singing bride. So I think what's really cool is seeing where I was before. I'd always loved music. I didn't care to sing. And then getting into this whole Christianity part of my life was like, okay, I actually enjoy it. But now that I know the Lord, I'm like, I want to be able to use this for the glory of the Lord. And even just like who I was apathetic and angry about parents, and like just really feeling unwanted and feeling like I needed to prove myself, to still in this area, like just these stages of now where I'm at of like, God, I want to work from rest and from love, not for rest and for love. So that's kind of a bit about me. Oldest of four. I'm in Roseville now, living my life and helping build night and day prayer. So it's really exciting.
So for people, because we have listeners from all kinds of different backgrounds, for people
Yeah,
who may not know what a house of prayer is, can you just describe what a house of prayer is for people?
absolutely. So there are many ways to do houses of prayer, night and day prayer. So what we do is we are building night and day prayer with the harp and bowl model. If you have heard of IHOP KC at all, they are mixing the harp, which is the music, and the bowl, which is the prayer of the saints, in Revelation 5:8. And we are putting those two together night and day. And we're doing intercession sets, which is where you are praying through a scripture and you have a prayer topic, and then you have singers that are singing out the prayers. And then all of us come together in a chorus. There's a chorus leader, they'll form a chorus, go through it like 6 to 8, 10, however many times you need. And the whole room is joining in and agreeing in prayer. So we are proclaiming the coming of the Lord. We are praying for our city. We are praying for our state. We are praying for missionaries. We're praying for the ending of racism. We're praying for racial reconciliation in the states, within different races, between Jews and Arabs. We're praying for unity in the bride, oneness. We're praying for young adults. We're praying for all these things. And we're agreeing together as a body. And like, even when it doesn't feel like it's working, we're seeing testimonies. I'm on a set where we're praying for the ending of sex trafficking once a week. And there was a time where every week we were partnering with Exodus Crime, praying specifically and seeing testimonies every week. It was crazy. So there's that, there's intercession. And then there's worship with the word, which is where you are singing through a Bible verse or a passage, and you're singing around it, and you're just getting revelation, and everybody in the room is engaging with this passage with you, and all of us are singing about it together. Like, wow. Like, there's one time we were singing out of Psalm 91, and a girl on my team, one of my friends, she started singing like I don't have to strive to get your attention. Like, you protect me. I've set my love on you. I don't have to strive to get that from you. And all of us are singing around this, and to where these songs are being pulled into different devotionals, young adults worship sets and stuff. And then you have devotional, which I just mentioned. So that is when one person, maybe two, is sitting with an instrument and just singing to the Lord, or sometimes even just playing. So with that model, we are actually we are working on giving the Lord 24/7 worship and prayer. So he is coming back for a singing bride. He is looking to find faith on the earth. He is looking to find friends of the bridegroom. So I've just been dwelling a lot on the whole, what does it mean to be a friend of the bridegroom, and alignment. So if like there's people that haven't learned about the house of prayer, if you are doing stuff like, as we are pursuing the Lord intimately on our own, there is a blessing that comes corporately, and that's where the house of prayer comes in, where everybody can go in. And it's really beautiful when we all get to agree on prayers together and just like see what the Lord's doing in our city together. So I hope that kind of answers it.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
So you also mentioned Awaken the Dawn. Is Awaken
Mm-hmm.
the Dawn similar to IHOP, or where does it overlap, or where is it different?
So I kind of like to describe it as the titles are kind of like lines that are for the more businessy like aspect side of things. So that way things can be separated in that way. It's also one thing. So Awaken the Dawn is tents. Like, we're building the tabernacle of David through tents. So we do Tent America every year, and it's for every city, every capital, and every campus. So it's more evangelical, whereas a house of prayer is more like just a place where we can come together to pray, like the equipping of the saints, and we're all there together. Awaken the Dawn is more focused on the outreach aspect of the house of prayer. So, for example, here we did a tent at the California State Capitol, and it was more like, okay, it was for everybody to hear. Like, you never know who you're going to get when you're outside. You know what I mean? So it like I just think of like the verse in Isaiah that says, I will make them joyful in my house of prayer. So that's what David Bradshaw talks to us about. He's like, you can't argue with supernatural joy, and people are going to want to come to the presence of God. So that's more Awaken the Dawn is focusing more on the outward tent aspect with it. So it's really cool, because like if you're like me and you're wanting to do evangelical worship, like something like a tent outside, or even just sitting on a curb, this is for you. Like, this is something that I would encourage to get plugged into, because it's really beautiful to see the way that the body of Christ comes together for things like this.
So how does that work? I've seen a bunch of the promo videos for Awaken the Dawn, and I've wanted to go to a couple of the events. I've also been to IHOP. When I lived in Istanbul for a couple years and I was part of a house of prayer there,
Wow.
our team would go a couple times a week, real early, and we pray for a couple hours as part of
Wow.
the sets there. And it was really powerful the way that God would move. It was awesome. But with Awaken the Dawn, it's more, you're saying it's more evangelistic. So are these the same intercessors who are going out, or because obviously as an intercessor you're called to reach people for the Lord, but at the same time there are some people who are called to be evangelists. So is Awaken
Yes.
the Dawn more evangelist, or is it literally intercessors who are part of the house of prayer going and they're setting up tents and praying in those tents, or do they, how does that work? Do they go out on the streets and are they doing evangelism like kind of the classic way we think of, or are they going and praying on the streets, or how does that work?
So it just kind of depends. So my home base, my missions base, my house is the house of prayer. But the Lord called me as someone who's been involved with Awaken the Dawn, California, to help put together this specific tent. So I can only speak really in terms of California because that's where I'm mostly involved in. I've been to a few national events with Awaken the Dawn, but here we all had, like, our different counties had different tent leaders. We had one person oversee all of it to make sure everything was getting done, but we picked a date. So we had 24 hours. We were September 17th through September 18th, 7 p.m. to 7 p.m. So we just like claimed those hours for our state to be out in our campuses, in our counties, in our cities, at our capital, to just say like, okay, we're giving this to the Lord. Whatever he does is what he does. Like, one of my teammates was like, I'm always ready to take bullets whenever we're at the Capitol. You never know what's going to happen. Like, just that thing is, it's like, we are coming out and we're making a ruckus for the Lord and seeing what he does with it. So some people came up and asked questions. Some people came up and asked for prayer. Some people just came by. We had some cool things happen, some swirly stuff happen. We even had like some manifestation that was just really wild. And so it's just like, you kind of claim out. Every year's different. It's only been 4 years, I think, since Awaken the Dawn really started. So I think it is the same, but it's not the same intercessors, like in a way of like, I invited some friends from the House of Prayer to take some sets with us, but also it is like that whole unity aspect of, we invited other churches in the Sacramento area, other groups in the Sacramento area, to bring their sound to and release what the Lord has given them into the city. So yeah, so I kind of like to see it as more like the unity, like it's evangelical. It's also like unity. It's also just like, we're just bringing what the Lord gave us out into the city and see what he does with it and offering it to him. So that was what it was like for us in California. I think what's really beautiful is every state has something different. Some people do it in a big public area. Some people have done it in their church parking lots. So it really is just wherever you feel like the Lord is leading you. If you want it to be the same people from your church or people from around, it could be whatever, which is the beautiful part. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about how God called you to quit your job. And I was just curious if you would share more about that testimony, that journey.
Dude, I would love to.
Tell us.
Yeah, so I was working at, I don't know if you guys know of Dutch Bros. I don't know who knows about Dutch Bros or who doesn't. It's just like a drive-through coffee shop. Really, like, just, it's really fun. You're known for the vibe, you're known for the upbeat, you're known for the customer service. So I've been working in food service, coffee, whatever, ever since I got out of high school. And I just was hitting this wall with the Lord. Like, 2020 was hard for everybody, you know, like all of us went through something. And for me, what it took was a really hard breakup. And then some spiritual parents of mine opened their house to me. And they were like, hey, we're gone for 3 months on a missions trip and we'd love to offer you the house. At the time I was living with my mom, and I was like, you know what? I feel like I just need to take the Moses perspective. And I called it like my Mount Sinai, like my place to get alone with God. And it just kept coming up as I was meeting with him, or like I'd be listening to worship music, I'd be playing music myself. And I just remember just feeling like something's wrong, and something's not going to look the way I want it to. And I need to do something about it, I guess. And I just remember being in prayer time, and I was like, I think the Lord's telling me to quit my job. And I was actually texting like mentors and stuff, like really to make sure, like, does God do that? Like, that doesn't seem wise. I've always had a job ever since I graduated high school. I'm used to like trying to make my own ends meet, and like that just seems wise to have a job. But the way that the Lord was leading me so rapidly, I got to Dutch Bros for work think early September. And I just remember like hating it, like instantly, like there's just no grace for me to be there anymore. And I was like pushing through, and I was like, maybe I'm just hitting that slump. I've been here a year, like just all these things that I've done before. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I need to send it. I need to hit the trigger, and I just need to leave. And I was like, okay, God, I'm going to work through this. I'm start writing out my 2 weeks notice and just still praying about it. And then my friend Zach calls me. He's part of the international ATV group. And he is calling us about how Awaken the Dawn is taking over 50 hours of David's tent in the beginning of October. I was like, bro, I don't think I'm going to make it. Like, I don't know. It's not enough money. And he's like, well, why don't you ask the Lord about this and this? And then I felt like the Lord told me to buy a plane ticket. And as soon as I bought a plane ticket, I felt like the Lord was like, quit your job. And I was like, okay. So I just acted in faith. And I was like, the worst thing that could happen is I quit, I hear wrong, and I can come back after my trip. Like, I just was trying to take all the perspectives and was like, if I'm not hearing the Lord, I can still go back. And as soon as I get to DC, some spiritual mentors of mine, now they're parents and supporters of mine, they pulled me aside in the tent and they gave me money. They adopted me. And then they were like, we also just see this and this and this. And it was everything that I went with the Lord of like, am I supposed to quit my job? Why am I doing this? What's the point? And they didn't even know. Like, nobody knew that I quit my job because it was literally 3 days before I went on that trip. And so I was like, okay, God, I'm going to sit here. I sat there the whole 50. No, it was 30 hours. Sorry, not 50, 30 hours. I sat there the whole 30 hours in that tent. And the Lord just kept saying, like, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. And I realized that in my own life, I was trying to do everything on my own, but the Lord was just calling me to something greater. And I was like, I feel like I'm called into worship ministry. And I kept getting prophetic words that it's not going to be what it looks like. So then when I'm there, I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't feel like I got any crazy breakthrough. Like, I got that and I got that prophetic word, but I'm like, okay, God, but like, what now? And then it wasn't until I got back, I came back from DC with 2 months of my expenses, everything paid. Like, people just kept giving me money. And then someone bought my plane ticket to go to Sean Foyt's thing, which is where I met Katie. And all that stuff was covered. And I was like, okay, God, like, I'm just going to keep going until you stop taking care of me in this way, until you say not to. And all of a sudden, it's like a year and a half almost later. And I'm still like, now I'm in the process of support raising because now I'm like a full-time missionary. So there's that. And I am noticing the stretch and the pull and like, okay, this still takes a lot of faith to ask for money. And it still takes a lot of faith to do the hard work. But I just realized in that year, like, if God says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. Like, if he's telling me to quit my job, I kept just meditating on the verse of my sheep hear my voice. My sheep hear my voice. I'm like, okay, God, like, I can't just sit back and accuse you for not speaking. And I can't sit back and even put shame on myself for thinking that I'm not hearing you. Like, faith takes action. Faith requires action. So I'm just going to move. I'm going to move my feet 1 foot in front of the other and see what happens. And so, like, it was the wildest year of my life. My car broke down. Someone stole my catalytic converter off my reliable car. I was using my mom's car. I was commuting with my mom's Jeep. And then, like, it was just a crazy year, but no matter what, like, I was taken care of and I never lacked. So it was wild. It was the craziest season of my life.
Yeah.
I've never traveled or anything so much before in my life.
Isn't there a story about like a Martin as well?
Oh, my Martin, yes.
Yeah,
so in February, yes, end of February, the backstory to this is crazy too, because I have a cousin that literally lived 40 minutes away from me that has loved the Lord for years and has been praying for family members. Guys, this is going to make me emotional. Wow. Like, he's been praying for family members for years. He was 15 or 16 when he got saved. And then he found me on Instagram and he reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm your cousin. And I was like, what? Like, and I'm Hispanic. So like, everybody's your cousin at some point. Right. So I was like, no way. So I texted my dad and he's like, oh yeah, Kino, like whatever. Like, he was just going off about him. And I was like, okay. So I start keeping up in contact with him. At this point, we're only like Instagram friends, checking in every so often. So he has a dream that we met up, we talked, I said something that unlocked something for either one or both of us. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's put something on the calendar. Turns out he's literally 40 minutes away from me. And I'm like, that's nothing. So we meet up, we talk, we hang out, and it felt like we'd known each other for years. So then he takes me out to like the sanctuary because we're meeting up at their church. And he's like, you should play some of the songs that you wrote. And I did on my little cheap little Fender. That guitar was also given to me years ago. So I'm sitting there playing that. And I guess his wife gets a download from the Lord and was like, we need to buy her a guitar, like a nice guitar and stuff. So I go to San Diego for a weekend and I come back and my cousin's like, hey, will you lead worship for youth group on Wednesday? I'm like, absolutely, I'd love to. So I get there and then he texts me. He's like, okay, when you're here, let me know. And then come to my wife's office. So I get into her office. I sit down and he just shuts the door and behind it is a Martin. I didn't think anything of it for a second. I was like, okay, cool. Like I was just so everywhere else that I did not put anything together that could have been for me. Cause I know that they play, like he plays bass. So I was like, whatever. And then they hand me a card and they're like, read it. And I'm like, I don't like getting emotional in front of people. It takes me a long time to process something. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I'm opening this card. I'm reading through it. My jaw drops and I just look and he's like, hands me this like Martin. And I'm like, let me tell you, I've been asking for a Martin for 4 years. Ever since I got saved, I've been asking for a Martin. So I was like, and then the story of him getting it was like, he brought cash and it just kept multiplying. And the model that he was going to get me, the newer model ended up being the same price as that one because it was on sale. So like just all the upgrades, like just the favor of the Lord and just like the confirmation that came with it, like the Levite calling to like be a watchman and like just sing the Lord and stuff. I was just, everything was like all inside of me. And that was just in February. So it's been about a year. And it's that thing is my baby. Like I take it with me everywhere. We've been through many battles together, but I think like, it's just crazy the lengths that the Lord will go to affirm what he's been speaking to you. And I've just been faithfully asking, like, whether it was here or there, I knew people that worked with Martin. I was like, man, I want one. Like, God, please, 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 please. And then it happened to be from a family member. Like, what the heck? So, and he's like the only other one that I know that like a spirit-filled believer. And I was just like, mess.
That's
awesome.
Wild. I love testimonies
so cool.
like that.
It's nuts.
Man. Yeah, God, it's so bad. I was noticing on your finger you have a tattoo of a light bulb. Tell me about that.
All right. So this was an impulse. This was a COVID buy. But that happened in that same 3 months where I quit my job, went through all that stuff and was like, okay. And then every time I would go into intercession, I was just like praying constantly, like, you know how we pray for revival and we're praying for this to happen? I was like, but it's deeper than that. Like I just kept praying for like an awakening, like a burning, like a light, something needs to switch and stuff. And all of a sudden I like saw this light bulb on my finger and I was like, that's silly. And I was like, whatever. And then I kept seeing it to the point where my hand was actually on fire that I was strumming. And I was like, and I'm one of those like, that's like, send it, full send. Like I'm an Enneagram 7, let's do it. No thoughts, no question. Like, so I called some friends and I was like, I just want to go get a stupid tattoo. And I feel like it actually means a lot. And then like, I get it. At first I was like, I regret it. And I was like, this is dumb. But the more that I look at it and the more like, sometimes I don't even notice it, but people ask about it. And I'm like, guys, like, can you imagine if all of us would just like, let the word transform us and wake us up, like awake, O sleeper, like all these things. And I just went into this thing of like, if Jesus is the light of the world and if in him, there's no darkness at all, that's what I want to be praying into. Like, I don't want to be living in darkness. I don't want to see a church living in darkness when there's actual liberation and vulnerability and stuff. So I just got one on my finger because everyone can see it.
That's awesome.
People ask about it all the time. I'm just like,
well, it stands out. That's awesome.
Right. I'm like, who cares?
So I have another question for you.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about having spiritual parents and spiritual mentors and also this dream and this passion about being a spiritual mom. And for anyone that doesn't, if that sounds like different to them, could you explain like what that is, what that looks like, and maybe what you feel God's speaking about that to you?
Absolutely. Okay, let me tell you, I've been on this train for months. So I know for sure like a lot of kids deal with absent parents. For me, it was absent parents in the home. So my dad was always working a lot. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and there was just like a lot of disconnect, a lot of emotional disconnect. And when I was younger, one of my best friend's parents, who ended up being our youth pastor, like they were the only parents that I really found to be safe. The only parents that really told me they were proud of me, showed up for me, invited me to things, helped me learn guitar and stuff. So ever since I was a little girl, I always knew like I need mom and dad. Like, and whenever I would need comfort or something, it was I could go to my parents, but it wasn't what I would need. So then when I got saved, something switched for me where the Lord, I didn't even do anything. Like I was living in Chico for almost 5 years, and mothers and fathers just came to me. Like the Lord guarded my heart, and I'm so grateful because like I had people coming and speaking life into me. I had so many mom friends. I had way more mom friends than friends that were close to my age. I had maybe 2 or 3 girlfriends that were close to my age. And there's people that would just speak testimonies over me and like would pray and prophesy over me, would invite me over to just worship and have coffee, or even if we just would have coffee and breakfast, not even get to the worship part. Like just realizing the value of having people around you who have already been through what you're going through, or have lived like all these people, like moms and dads, they were teenagers once, moms and dads, they were in their 20s once. Like they have so many valuable things to say and show you that, like, I think that as young kids who are used to being independent, we can think we know everything, whether we admit it or not. Like we're like, oh, I don't need your help. I don't like being told what to do. Even sometimes I still struggle with being told what to do, because I'm like, I can do it. Like I'm independent. I've helped take care of my siblings growing up and all these things. But I think like God has an immense value for mothers and fathers. Mothers and fathers, what we talk about in the program right now, they are the head forerunners right now. So like how in Malachi, how it talks about turning the hearts of the fathers back to the children, hearts of the children back to the fathers. It's like there's still that unity and bridging the gap. And that's something that I'm super passionate about, is bridging the gap, realizing that a 2-year-old has just as much to teach me that a 92-year-old does. You know, like a 16-year-old has so much to teach me and I have so much to teach a 16-year-old, and vice versa. Like a newlywed has something to give to me as someone who's dating. Like, you know, like all these things. We have so much to learn and so much to teach each other. But I think that there is a different blessing that comes with generations. Like we call it the generational blessings, when other people can speak into your life and say, yes, this is great, like bearing witness and everything. So when you surround yourself with mothers and fathers, people that you are giving permission. So if you are a listener and you're like, okay, I'm still not understanding, like if you've ever had a mentor or a teacher, like these are people that you actually go beyond that. You go beyond them, letting them just like teach you or like walk with you through things. You're letting them speak into your life. You're letting them say, hey, I heard that this happened today, or like what you told me this happened, or like this conversation you had, I don't know if that was the right thing to say. Maybe we should clean this mess up a little bit. How could that have gone better? Like you're letting them help rewire your thinking the way that the Lord would. Because I take Proverbs 4 seriously when he's like, let me speak to you as like a father speaks to a kid. And for the longest time, I would just look at my dad's face or my parents' face and be like, well, it wasn't always kind. But the father has my best interest at heart. He protects me. He knows what's coming. So I'm going to let him speak into my life. I'm going to let him guide me in his truth and teach me, because I can't go by my own truth. So if you're a listener and you're like, I don't have any parents, go look for them. Like they might not always come to you. Like it is so valuable to go and say, hey, I like the way that this person's living their life, and I see that they're on fire for the Lord and they genuinely love him. What can I take from them in like a healthy way? Not in a what can I just get an entitlement, but like what do they have to teach me? And I think that if we forget about mothers and fathers and just go to our peers, that's where we can start getting into a train of gossip. That's where we can start getting to a train of like, oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, or like we're not actually being honest with each other. But mothers and fathers, when you give them permission, they will tell you like it is. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful, because if we forget about it, and if we get about generational blessings and like, hey, like these people went through this stuff, like they paid a price to be here, so that way they could talk about it when they get farther. Like let them talk about it. Like I love to sit with mothers and fathers and just listen. Sometimes I don't even have anything to say, but I know that like, because I'm coming after them and I'm asking them to have this part of my life, I can call them too and be like, hey, I screwed up. Like I remember there was one time I stumbled, like right when I was saved, like after that Awaken the Dawn event. For the first time when I called and I stumbled, I didn't feel like I was going to be met with condemnation, but I was going to be met with mercy and love. So this mentor of mine was like, okay. And I was like, what do you mean? Okay, you're not going to like chastise me or like rip me apart for this. She's like, what does the Lord say about you right now? And I just remember weeping of like, that's what I need. Like I need mothers and fathers, because it's not the condemnation or the punishment that's going to change my heart. It's the love of the Father that's going to transform my heart, because he's the only one that can. So get mothers and fathers in your life. Do it. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's needed. It's holy. It's holy. So.
Well, yeah. And that's so powerful there. I'm reading this biography of Martin Luther right now, who was like one of the main reformers, and the chapter that I read last night, it actually is talking about this, of course, from his own point of view, and this is in the 1500s. And Martin Luther, he'd been raised in the Catholic Church. He was a priest, a Catholic priest, who was one of the most dedicated Catholics of his day. And of course, in those days, it was all about sin. And he was obsessed with sin, of whether there was any sin at all in his life. They said he would spend up to 6 hours a day in the confessionals because he would look for absolutely any envy, any
Wow.
little thought that he had, any tiny thing, and that the other priests would get mad at him because they would say, if you're going to come confess, would you confess an actual sin instead of these little tiny, they said pecadillos, like little tiny.
Right.
And
Wow.
and because he was so obsessed, because he was so worried that if he made the tiniest mistake, that God would just obliterate him, that he was going to go to hell. So he would go to these what do they call it, like the priest temples, whatever they call it, the Catholic churches, but they would have these big marble stairs. And in those days, the Catholic priests, they would go up on their knees and they would kiss each stair as they walked up, because supposedly every stair you kissed would take 7,000 years off of your grandma's purgatory. Like literally,
What?
yeah.
Whoa.
And so Martin Luther
Dang.
for years, and he was asked to be a leader as one of the priests when he was still Catholic, and he's going through this whole process of every day just living in terror of God. And he met a man, it was a fellow priest, but this priest was actually a mystic, which the mystics, there was only the Catholic Church, there were no Protestants, but the mystics were very different, because the mystics, they were the first people after the 400s who believed that you could actually go to God directly and not have to go through a priest. So they were people of prayer, and they were your first
Wow.
real prayer warriors, your first real people who had houses of prayer, essentially. And Martin Luther, he built this relationship with this mystic. His name was, it sounds like stupid in English, but it's like stupid. It's something like that. And
Yeah.
he was an older priest who he started to mentor. He started to be a father to Martin Luther, and he kept going to Martin Luther and saying and trying to explain to him, like, God actually loves you. You don't need to be
Wow.
obsessed over all these. He said, everything you're doing, you're trying to work for salvation when Jesus died for you. That stuff is worthless.
Yeah.
All this kissing the stairs and confessing all day, every day. He said, Jesus forgave you on the cross for that. And it was through that relationship with this priest, who was like a father to him, that
Wow.
one day Martin Luther, he caught that revelation. And he wrote in his journal, Martin Luther, he said it was the first time in his life that he realized that God's judgment was not that God was going to judge him and destroy him, but God's judgment was actually that he loved him, that God's declaration of judgment was actually that he
Wow.
loved him, and that he wasn't looking at him with eyes of wrath, but he was looking at him with eyes of love. And he would have
Wow.
never had that revelation if this fatherly figure, this old mystic, hadn't come down and dedicated time into him. And if Martin Luther had not been open to receiving from that, because Martin Luther, he was a young guy who thought he knew everything. He thought he knew the Bible better than anyone. He was the best priest, the
Yeah.
best monk. And he realized, I actually need help, and other people can help me. And he thankfully took the advice of this monk, has this huge revelation, and not long after that, the whole Reformation starts, because it took him down this road of, wait a minute,
Wow.
we're not supposed to be paying priests so that Aunt Susie can have a few thousand years left in purgatory, and there is no purgatory. This is ridiculous, and all the stuff
Yeah.
just to manipulate and control, and all the things that they did back then. And it changed literally the planet. And it started with this one father figure who was willing to work with, who was probably a very difficult person to work with.
Sure. I would imagine. And it's so beautiful when like you are allowing imperfect people to pour into you too. Like the humility it takes to actually be like, you're not perfect, but I'm gonna let you tell me what to do in this area, and then we'll figure it out from there. Like, what? Wow. I didn't know that about Martin Luther. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's the book I'm reading. It's called Here I Stand. The book's 100 years old. Someone, I don't know where you find it. There was a guy in a church who has this old library, and he let me borrow it. The pages are all yellow, and it's pretty awesome.
Excellent.
It's an awesome book. I've really been loving it.
Wow, man.
Wow. Yeah. So tell me, you're in the house of prayer right now. Are you there? And I don't know how much you can share, but are you there for long term? Do you have plans in the future? What do you feel like the Lord's leading you in right now? Just to continue there?
Yeah. So right now so I didn't even see myself at the house of prayer. So this is kind of where I'm at, is with being an IM, I want to be faithful for definitely a year. Like, I'm just kind of taking this, like, I'm going to be faithful with this for the next year. And then wherever the Lord takes me from there. But I do see myself doing this forever. Like, whether it be with the House of Prayer Sacramento, whether it be, so IMs also, it's like in general, you're building night and day prayer. Some people take that and then they build somewhere else. And I would really love to help build night and day prayer in other places as well. But I don't know if that would take like a full like geographical like move, or if it would be like teaching and helping prep and like do all these things. So right now I am being faithful with an IM. I am also working on like starting up a business with my friend who is doing like the whole network marketing thing. And like, I'm actually really convicted of like the Lord taking over the marketplace. Like, so we're getting involved with her, and actually the company that we're working with, like they are faith, family, finances, like those 5 F's, like all that stuff. So, it all comes down to like, this is all my vehicle. I really want to see a generation know God, and I want it to be long lasting. Like, that's where the whole, like, this is where I see myself. I see myself being a mom, like spiritually, naturally. Like, I have always wanted to do the whole stay-at-home mom wife thing, and I always thought like maybe that was wrong and stuff. But the Lord has actually convicted me to this thing of like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to help support my family, whatever it takes, like with this business and fundraising. But ultimately, like, it's going to be unto the Lord, and like changing, like helping change the hearts of young people, because they're the next people to carry the torch. And like, we want to be able to trust and know who it's going to, but also like give them the confidence to feel empowered and carry the torch themselves, rather than being like, I'm just gonna let it burn and not do anything with it. But like, whereas like actually like going to other torches and lighting them on fire. So right now, this is what I'm going to be faithful with. And I'm more passionate about people. So
let me ask you something, because I've been thinking about this whenever you were talking earlier about, because we all need mothers and fathers in our lives. I don't care how old you are. We all need mothers and fathers in our lives.
Yes.
So whenever, let's say somebody is listening or watching this and they're thinking, I really need that, but I don't have anything. You mentioned earlier about find those people, look for them. But a lot of people, their question is going to be, okay, there's somebody in my life. There's an elder in my church, or a Sunday school teacher, or whatever, whoever, stay-at-home mom, doesn't matter. There's somebody in my life that they're really on fire for the Lord. But I don't know what to even say to them. What would you recommend to somebody? How do you approach somebody and say, hey, can you be my mom? How do you do that?
Yeah. I think it's easier than we make it seem. I feel like because of lies that we told ourselves of unworthiness, or like things that we put on ourselves from parents or other like coaches or whatever, we can think I'm not worth the time. So therefore it's not worth the ask. However, what's the best way to build relationship? One day at a time. Like, for me, it was, hey, let's get coffee. I think you're really cool. Can we get coffee? I'd love to hear your story. Or just simple, hey, can I give you a phone call? Like, there's just something I want to talk through, and you seem to be really, really good at this. Like, what draws you to that person, and where can you let that lead into conversation to build relationship? Because after a while, you'll start to get to know a human being. And the thing is like, with vulnerability, you kind of just give it out. And if they take it, they take it, and then you can give more. But if they give it back, or if they reject it, then you're like, okay, well, maybe you don't have access to that part of my life. There are certain mentors in my life that have certain parts of my life. So there are people that I talk to about my relationship, and they'll pour into that. There are people that I talk to about money. There are people that I talk to about like different parts of my life, because that's the grace that they carry. So if you are looking at people and saying like, man, I really need mothers and fathers, I'm desperate. Like, this is why things aren't going right. Like, I know I need people to help me out. What do you need? Identify your need and be like, okay, if I'm needing comfort, who seems more like a comforting figure to you? Take them out to coffee. Ask them to take you out for coffee. See if you can even just come over and do breakfast, depending on the relationship. Like, obviously, like if you're not sure about them, or if you're just meeting them, don't get alone with them in their house, obviously. But what's drawing you to them? And just ask. Just ask. You're worth the ask. You are worth being poured into. The Father delights in you. He is happy with you. He is not changing his mind about you, and he wants to give you good things, including parents, whether it's natural or supernatural. What I notice is that my supernatural parents have shown me a lot about the Father. So just ask. I think we make it very complicated, but I think it's just simple as, how do you make friends? You just hang out with them once or twice, and then you can see if, can I continue hanging out with you? Same with parents. It's hard. What we want, I think sometimes we want to take the hard work out of the relationship, but the relationship that I have with some mentors of mine is years of vulnerability. And like, was like, hey, I have some really big things to work through. Are you the person that I can work through this with? And then after that, vulnerability is what starts to build relationships. So, and also like take heart if it's just for a season. There are some spiritual parents that have been in my life before that aren't as involved now, and it's okay because it just moves with seasons. As Christians, our time moves in seasons. So just what do you need now, and go for it from there. Some of them are long-term covenantals, the word we like to use, like for lifers basically. And then there are some people that are like, you have something that I need in this season, and I would love to just hang out with you. So just ask.
That's so good. Yeah, it's so good, and it's so key to what you said about making sure it's what you need for now, because some people you may be drawn to somebody, but they may not actually have what you need. I know for me, for many years, I was looking for mentors in my life, and because I lead a ministry, I wanted somebody who had experience in a ministry that was more advanced than my own, because I wanted somebody that could give me advice from a position of someone who's already been through it. And so it took a long time for me to find someone, but now I have a couple mentors in my life. But it took
worth it.
Yeah, it's totally worth it when you find the right
so
person.
Worth it. Yeah, and then you live and you learn. Like we just got to take the pressure off. We just got to like learn to like teach other people. Like there's no pressure in asking. You just got to one day at a time.
Yeah, worst thing that can happen is they say no.
Right. There's always going to be somebody else.
And I love that you talked about like how time moves in seasons for us. Like I can think back over the course of my years, and I can see those seasons of the Lord where he's had me in one place, and I just so happened to meet someone there and then had coffee with them, like you said. And it's like the conversations that it led into might have only been a one-time moment, but there's into my life that were later confirmed by other people. Like you had said something about how the Father will go to great lengths to confirm what he wants to say to you. And I just think that's so true. Like, and so he'll use any means possible to reach out to us and to speak to us and to confirm those things. And he does. And sometimes it's just one season here or one season there, and it looks different the next one.
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen. Like, you just never know. You really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something you said early on about you had a moment that took you from saved to surrendered. And I loved the way you said that, because I can think of people that have told their stories before that I've heard, and they'll say like, well, maybe I wasn't saved before, so maybe that was really when I got saved. And I like the word you put to that of like saved to surrendered. And so is there any advice that you could give to someone that may feel like they're listening to your story and they're like, wow, she's living the life that I wish I could live with the Lord. I wish I had that freedom. Like, how do I get just from saved to surrendered? Like, how did you really transfer from those two places? And how could someone else get there?
That's a good question. I think, okay, so I'm putting myself back into saved versus surrender. So I'm in this still limbo phase. Like, if I'm back there, I'm just looking at myself and realizing like how unhappy I truly was, is because I was constantly trying to live up to be something I wasn't, or trying to earn. But my advice to people who would be from saved to surrender is like, just don't be afraid to jump. Don't be afraid to jump, because I know for me, I came from a Catholic background. It was really scary to jump into the prophetic. It was really scary to go to do anything off the page. It was really scary to be fully myself creatively. And it was really scary to speak in tongues. People who spoke in tongues freaked me out. But now I take comfort in my prayer language. And now, like, if I don't go off the page, like, and just in my quiet time or whatever, I'm like, what am I bringing the Lord? What does he want? And what can I give him that's my own? Because I want to show him my heart, whether it's through the words of the other people wrote, or if it's like, it took me, like, it's their words that took me to get to my own. Like, saved versus surrendered Mercedes looks like working for something, but surrendered Mercedes is realizing like, I can't do anything on my own. I just had this conversation with my best friend yesterday of like some fears I was wrestling through with the future. And I'm like, I think I'm just realizing how much I can't do on my own. So, and when I went from that moment, it took Todd White speaking about the orphan spirit, something that I'd never really heard of, or if I did, it didn't register. But hearing this man who walked through similar things that I did, like hearing him talk, I need God. I need a dad. I need a father, and I'm not a mistake. And this is something that I need to be convicted of. And that's what I got convicted of, is like, I'm a kid, like forever I'm this kid. And then I'm also his bride, but I'm also this. But like, regardless, we're still one. We talk, like Jim, our founder, he's telling us, he's like, ask the Lord what it means to be caught up in the fellowship of the Trinity and stuff. So I think that's what I would say is like, start asking the Lord hard questions and just let him woo you and let him romance you. Like, I'm actually using these words like, yes, in the literal term, let him romance you and like love you to the point where you're like, okay, like, I trust you, you can have my heart. And then we think in the term of relationship, it's like, you don't always give everybody your heart, but the Lord is so trustworthy to have it. And I didn't believe that when I was saved. So what I would say from going saved to surrendered is just jump, just do it. Just do it. It's going to be scary. It's going to be messy. It's going to be crazy. But I think that that's where the actual most beautiful things of life are, is in that mess. And then when things are bloody and gory and dirty and everything, that's when the most beauty comes out of it. So just jump. That's my advice.
That's awesome.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's a good word of advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
This was awesome. Absolutely.
It was an honor to have you, as a blessing, and so it's so encouraging to hear just your testimonies. And for me, listening to you speak, it's like, wow, because I'm getting close to 40 now, but
no way. You guys just look so young.
I know. Well, she's a child
We're
too.
about the same age.
But you know, I started in ministry when I was 16, and so whenever I was 25, I was in Panama as a missionary, and not that I've lost it, because I'm still just on fire for the Lord, but I love hearing the testimonies of someone like yourself, who you're relatively new and just that is so excited, which it doesn't change. Like, as long as you keep following the Lord, it's always exciting.
Yeah,
but there's something that it just fires you up to hear a young person who's like, we can take over the world. Like, I'm sitting here like, yes, we will. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. I seriously had the best time. I was like, I need to make it. I was like, I don't know how we're gonna make this work, but we did it, and it was awesome. You guys are amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. So do you want to just pray for our viewers, pray for our audience, maybe pray for them that are like seeking those spiritual parents, or pray for their fire, their surrender, and that's how.
Yeah, dude, I would love to. Yeah. So Jesus, I just thank you that we lack nothing in you. I thank you that you are perfect. I thank you that you see everything behind and before, God. You look at the end, so that way we can work through everything in the middle, God. I thank you that we don't have to do anything to make you happy. You're already happy with us. So God, for every listener, every viewer, God, even us, God, that you would just come and encounter our hearts with our need for forerunners, our need for those who have gone before us, our need for spiritual parents, for mentors, God, that you would just even supernaturally, and those that are listening and are breaking and are like burdened and are like, I need, even spiritual parents that are like, I need to be pouring into somebody. I can't just get spiritually fat over all this stuff. I need to actually give it away. Like, God, that you would just supernaturally put people together. God, you are master connector. So God, right now, even now, I ask that you would make phone calls happen, that coffee would happen even now, God, that you would put in our hearts people that we need to reach out to pour into, and to receive from. God, I thank you for the generational blessings, Jesus. And I just ask that you would come and revive our hearts again, just to what it means to really be a child, God, to walk in faith. Faith requires action. So God, I just ask for those who have really bold faith in this hour, because God, that's what it's going to take when you come back. God, we need people who are going to sit and watch and wait, no matter how hard it takes. So God, I thank you that you are doing this even now. I thank you that this is your heart, God. And I just even ask for comfort for those who are aching, for parents. God, I ask for boldness to jump from saved to surrendered. I ask for boldness to jump in general, God. For those, we don't stumble, Jesus. We are led by you. So God, I just ask that your will would be done right now, God. I thank you that you are the Father of fathers, God. I thank you that we have a great leader in you. So I just ask for your kingdom come and your will be done, just as Jesus told us to pray. Your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much.
Guys, anytime.
Yeah. We'll have to have you back on again.
Yeah, seriously. Let me know.
Great.
I'd love to.
All right. We'll see you.
Enjoy your day, guys. Bye.
Bye. You too.